For USCFootball.com, I'm Jack Smith, joined by Connor Morrissette for instant analysis from USC's 48-0 win over Utah State here in the Coliseum. First shutout for the Trojans since 2011. Connor, what were some of your biggest takeaways?
Dominant performance, first shutout since 2011, like you said. Probably the defense, you got to start there with the shutout. It's Utah State, it's an inferior opponent, but on a day when Notre Dame was upset, on a day when Penn State didn't look as good against an inferior team, there was a question after a big LSU win, would USC have a hangover? And to win 48-0, we can clearly say the answer to that is no. Offense was great too, but I start with the defense, pitching a shutout in the first half with the starters, the USC starters going against the Utah State starters. I think they only allowed 101 yards, USC did, and Eric Gentry finishes with 7 tackles and gets the first sack of the year. Easton Mascarenas-Arnold with an interception. The team is lined up correctly. They're tackling. The play calling with D'Anton Lynn is so much better. What a difference a new coaching staff makes, Jack. That was one of my big takeaways. And, again, Utah State, it's an inferior opponent. But when you beat LSU in week 1 and then you follow it up with a 48-0 win over Utah State, what else can you possibly say? This team, their ceiling's a lot higher than I thought at the beginning of the season, and they have a chance to have a special year. After a big 48-0 win, I don't think we can have any other takeaways.
Yeah, Utah State, I would agree, inferior opponent, but wasn't supposed to be a super inferior offense. I mean, this is a group last year. I know it's the Mountain West,
it's a quarterback that beat him last year.
26th in the country last year in points per game. This is a group last year that put up over 30 points each game they took the field. So to get shut out here in the Coliseum, and it never really even felt like they had a scoring chance. Never get to the red zone, barely ever get to USC's side of the 50, and they're so desperate for points, they're attempting a 52-yarder, which would have been their kicker Elliot Nimrod's career long. Like, that's how desperate Utah State came to scoring, and that's about as close as they came to putting the ball either, through the goalposts or in the end zone whatsoever. They never even got close against the USC defense.
Credit to D'Anton Lynn. I think the linebackers, Jack, have taken the biggest step from where that unit was a year ago. Mason Cobb didn't play tonight, but we all remember last season with Cobb and Gentry and Tackett Curtis and other guys in the linebacker room, just the confusion and not being on the same page. And then tonight you have Eric Gentry leading the charge and Easton Mascarenas there too. Both of those guys, like I said, had 7 tackles each, and they were making big plays up and down the field. Riley said the alignment is just better, and they're more physical, and they're tackling better, and I thought the defense would be better, but I didn't expect this quick of a turnaround so fast. I feel like it's really hard to do, and a lot of teams who were bad on defense the year before, they try to do different things and get a better defensive output the next season, and it's very rare for it to be this good this fast. I think that speaks to D'Anton Lynn, the fact that USC has a lot of really talented players on that defense, guys who are more experienced, guys who are older. And then I don't want to bring up last year too much, but just night and day with the coaching. I do not think those guys were getting good coaching. Clearly, the stats tell that story, but to get in a better staff, and now you see the results this year, just night and day.
I think I would have to agree there. In terms of this season, people have always wondered what's Lincoln Riley with the defense. This is the first time he's ever shut out an FBS opponent as a head coach, so you might be getting that answer this season, and boy, what a time it would come for USC. You have Miller Moss as the starter, you're going into the Big Ten, like that's when you feel like you need a defense if you're USC, and they might have found one this year. It's tough to tell, but USC in the last couple of years wouldn't have come close to sniffing a shutout in a game like this. They would allow 28 points to San Jose State. So to come out and play like this against a Utah State offense that's normally pretty good, super impressive from the defense. And I think you can sense the coaching in the fact that even the backups were aligned and communicating well and making plays and not making mistakes. Like the third string guys came in and it felt like they were holding the torch for the starters. And then that led to the shutout being clinched late. D'Anton Lynn still like a madman celebrating on the sideline. Like you could tell everybody was really locked in and keyed in on playing defense, no matter whether they were a starter or a third string guy, maybe a fourth string guy.
The third and fourth stringers only allowing Utah State to get into field goal range like that, you can't ask for any more than that. Utah State still had a lot of talented guys out there for their team, guys who they expect to have big seasons, so can't say enough about the defense. Offensively, USC last week against LSU, they only averaged 3 yards per rush. Tonight in the first half, they were at 8.7, and Woody Marks is over 100 yards and a touchdown at halftime. Quentin Joyner had that great 30-plus yard run where he shook off the defensive end for Utah State, and then he got in the end zone later on that series. He averaged, I think, over 10 yards per rush in this game. Establishing the ground game, that was one of the goals for Lincoln Riley this week. That was clear. I think he called 5 rushing plays on that first drive for USC. They came up with a field goal, but they clearly established the run, which was a goal. And They accomplished their goals tonight, Jack. I think the two things that you wanted to see, for me, you didn't want to have a hangover. They didn't have that. You wanted to get the reserves in. They did that. And then clearly, so a third goal, they wanted to establish the run, and they did that. 48-0. The only real nitpick you can have, a couple drops from the wide receivers who had a couple touchdown drops. Jacoby Lane dropped one. Zachariah Branch dropped one. But outside of those two minor mistakes in a 48-0 win, nothing else really to say nitpick-wise. The team was awesome. They just look really, really good right now.
It would be great if the lights had worked the entire game.
Yeah.
That's another nitpick. We almost didn't get the final 10 minutes in, and those would have been, even though USC was winning, some of the most valuable 10 minutes of the year just because of how many guys they got into the football game. But the lights didn't work for a bit. The peristyle torch had its faulty moment, but I agree. I don't think there's very many nitpicks you could have.
No.
Another thing I want to highlight, tight ends played tremendous tonight. You had Cade Eldridge getting a catch. Lake McCree, again, was either at or above 5 catches once again. You saw Walker Lyons with his first career reception, and those guys played a lot. And it wasn't just when the backups came in. You saw a lot of 2 tight end packages, whether that was McCree and Eldridge, whether that was Eldridge and Lyons. The tight ends were on the field a lot, and they caught a lot of passes tonight.
And the tight ends are obviously big in the run game too, but I thought it was interesting talking to McCree after the game. I asked him, why are the tight ends more involved when you were rehabbing from your holiday or your pre-holiday bowl knee injury? Was that something the coaching staff told you to do? Like, hey, rehab really quickly and because we're going to get you more involved in this offense. Not that if he wasn't going to get more involved, he wouldn't have rehabbed quick, but it just felt like they've transitioned a little bit to get the tight ends more involved. And he said it has more to do with Miller Moss than really the coaching staff emphasizing it. Miller likes to use the tight ends, and we've seen that clearly through 2 weeks here against LSU. McCree had 5 catches, which I think was a career high, 4 or 5 for him tonight. He's on pace for over 50 catches this season. I believe he had 27 last season, so he's exploded onto the scene. And like you said, Jack, Cade Eldridge for the second week in a row makes a catch. Your backup tight end. The backup tight end wasn't doing anything in the passing game last season. Walker Lyons makes a couple of nice plays tonight. He's a guy who people are really excited about for the future, and he took a Mormon mission, of course, and pushed back enrolling at USC. He broke his leg as a high school senior, so I wasn't sure how much we'd see of him this year. It speaks to his talent. He was a really highly ranked recruit. The fact that he's been able to get on campus and break onto the depth chart, break into the game tonight. So, yeah, all of a sudden USC's looking like tight end U a little bit, and it's taken me back to the days with, I think Lincoln Riley had Mark Andrews at Oklahoma, right? So I don't know if Lake McCree is Mark Andrews, but the tight ends are getting used a lot more, and that's really encouraging.
I'm going to be disappointed in myself because I'm forgetting the name. But Mark Andrews was the second highest drafted tight end on that Oklahoma team.
Oh, my goodness.
Because they had someone go in the first round, and it's going to eat me alive that I'm forgetting the name. But, yeah, he has had tight ends. He's had running backs before, too. And he'll be the first to point out when their offenses are going well, it's a run-first offense when he was at Oklahoma. And even first couple years at USC, mostly that first year with Travis Dye, they would run the ball at will against teams and use Caleb Williams in the run game as well. I think that started to taper off a bit last year when they didn't want to get him hurt. But I think if USC can run the ball like it did today, they're in a good spot for the rest of the year. Kind of felt like a day that you didn't even really know Miller Moss was out there. He wasn't asked to do a whole lot. He got the ball out quick. Wasn't a lot of pressure on him. Didn't make any extraordinary throws because he just could check it down, have the receivers make plays after the catch, dump it off to the running backs, or hand it off for nearly 300 yards on the ground. We did notice, though, when Miller Moss left the game because Jaden Mayava came in for his USC debut, he had a Caleb Williams-esque play. I thought he looked pretty good out there, and we did get to talk to him after the game. What did you notice from Jaden Mayava in his first time out?
He just said Lincoln Riley's a football genius. He feels like he's at home at USC after transferring from UNLV and moving around in high school a little bit. He thought that when Miller was named the starter, of course he wasn't happy as a competitor, but he said if that gives the team the best chance to win, I'm gonna go with it and be happy for him. And yeah, he just gives that offense a new dimension. I know Miller had the one carry tonight, which I thought was kind of funny in the third quarter, running him on a play, maybe a little risky, but gained I think like 6 or 7 yards. But Maeva, he looks like Caleb Williams in the sense of when that play breaks down, he's not going to throw the ball away. He's going to create in his legs, and that's how he scored that touchdown. He had a big gainer on that first series where he rolled out, and I think it was a fumble before. That could have been a disaster. He picks it up and then made a big completion to Kyle Ford, I believe. So he's just fun. He's exciting. He's raw, and that's sort of what we heard about him in practice, how you could see the ceiling, you could see the talent, but he's so raw and he needs more reps, and it was very valuable, the reps that he was able to get tonight. If Miller isn't on the team next year and Jaden's competing with someone else for the quarterback spot, I'm going to be really excited to see how he does, because his talent is so clear, and just he needs to get more refined, and I think tonight was a step forward for him for sure.
It's like Caleb running around in a tall wide receiver's body and Sam Darnold's number. It's kind of a weird thing to watch on the field, but it worked for the touchdown. I thought he looked pretty good.
Yeah.
I think if you had another nitpick, USC is still trying to figure out what to do with all these sophomore receivers.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like any of them have really gotten going yet or stepped up. You could see Lincoln Riley trying to get the ball in their hands, but sometimes there's a drop. Sometimes they're moving a little bit too much side to side, but you do get the highlight plays, like Mekhi Lemon's first career touchdown. I mean, he absolutely took the ankles of the safety that was manned up on him, but kind of doesn't feel like that group has really settled in yet. And I think if you're looking forward and what would be a huge key in the game at Michigan is finding out how you're going to use those 4 sophomore receivers, because it feels like it's not just them 4, it's like a whole group of 6 if you include Kyle Ford and Kyron Hudson, and the tight ends are really getting more play than those 4 sophomores anyway.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot from Kyron Hudson tonight, but again, USC ran the ball more. In football, it's funny, Jack. On paper, the offensive line, some new starters, Jonah Monheim moving to center. You maybe were a little concerned. I know I was heading into the season. They play a really solid game tonight. The defensive line, you got Bear Alexander, but what do you have behind him? And Bear tonight doesn't start again, and Gavin Meyer tips a pass that leads to an interception. Nate Clifton has a sack. You're seeing more from guys who we were a little bit unsure of, and then the sophomore receivers who they didn't play a ton last year, but all really highly ranked recruits, a group that we felt really good about. They're going through some minor adjustments here in their second years in college football, and that was the position group I was like, yeah, they haven't played a lot, but I'm going to really bank on their talent. I think they'll be just fine. It's funny, a lot of the preconceived notions that we had about this team, a little bit different now through 2 games, and I don't want to say I'm concerned about the receivers because I think that's a step too far, but you're right, going to Michigan, they didn't look very good today against Texas, but you imagine they play Arkansas State, I think, next week. They'll come in after a loss, and they'll challenge USC more than Utah State did, of course, and you're going to need those sophomore receivers. So they're adjusting a little bit, and I'm very interested to see how they respond after the bye week in a hostile environment, because if USC wins that game, then, hey, college football playoff is a realistic goal after that for sure.
And it might be a realistic goal right now with all of the parity that seems to be around college football right now. Lots of upsets today. Trojans made sure that they weren't going to be one of them. A 48-0 win tonight over Utah State. Connor, you have any more thoughts before we wrap it up? It's getting past 12:45 here, so we should probably wrap this one up.
The lights going out didn't help our bedtime tonight, Jack, but just final thoughts. Still amazed that looking back at the Holiday Bowl, how USC and Lincoln Riley, and it was even some of the old defensive staff members, they really changed that culture. And it was 53 guys who played in that game. They had like a 53-man roster between injuries and NFL opt-outs, NFL draft opt-outs. And that's when this sort of rebuild started, I think, from last year. Of course, they're still in a rebuild from where Lincoln Riley started things. It looks to be well on its way now. But I'm just talking about from where last year was, losing 5 out of 6 to end the season. You get the Holiday Bowl. And then the offseason, they make the push to gain all the weight. It seems like the team is way more connected. You win 2 games to start the year in dominating fashion against Utah State, and you surprise people against LSU. Credit to Riley and that whole coaching staff for getting a buy-in from this team, because I did not think this transformation would happen so quickly. Forget about the defense, too. Just overall as a team, from where they were a year ago to change things so quickly. Big surprise to me, and the coaching staff deserves a lot of credit because this USC team, they're dangerous. And the way their defense is playing right now, I think they're going to be in every game on their schedule because the defense is really good, Jack, and it's happened a lot quicker than I thought.
Yeah, we stood about this point on the field many times last year and said about the opposite. This doesn't feel like a very bought-in USC team right now. They can't really play defense. Doesn't feel like they're ever going to let a team not be in the game against them. It feels like every team is going to be in the game against USC, and that's not the way, obviously, it should be, and I think that's the way they attacked this offseason, and it was good to see them just absolutely go out there and plant Utah State today. Just a very encouraging performance, I think, for USC fans out there who are kind of waiting to see the way the season's going to play out. If the first 2 games are an indicator, it could be a pretty special year. I don't remember a much more dominant game here against a team like that from USC in a while, and a much better 2-game start that USC could have dreamt of. But that'll do it for us here on Instant Analysis. We got to get to bed a little bit. It's late. The lights might go out again. Who knows? But he's Connor Morrissette. I'm Jack Smith. Thank you guys so much for watching Instant Analysis. So much more content on USCfootball.com. Make sure you subscribe and like here, and check out the rest of the content on USCfootball.com.